You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. Joining him is everyone's favorite coach and hair model, Chris, aka Tex McQuilkin, Power Athlete's Director of Performance. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
We welcome back to the show Dr. Lindsay Matthews Cantu, Doctor of Chiro, birth doula, Texas A&M Aggie, had to throw that one in there, CEO of BirthFit, and most importantly, Power Athlete Symposium guest speaker and Power Athlete Radio alum, episode 276.
It's a big pedigree.
That was that long ago. Huh?
Pre-studio, pre-video, we recorded it right back there in our little kitchen.
Yeah, we did.
Where in this?
Yeah.
Was I there?
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, right there, like on the other side of the wall. We weren't even in here.
Weren't even in here.
Wow.
That's why when I walked in, I was like, whoa, it's so different.
Well, we actually have a studio now.
Yeah.
Not just a random
It
wall.
looks good, guys.
Thank
I'm
you.
impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Yes, thanks for making the drive down from Wimberley.
Yeah. And there's some great ranches out there. There's some great people out there. And I think, are you allowed to say, do you say
you can say whatever you want.
on the BirthFit podcast, I have a code word. It's called DVOC.
We can call it the pandemic. We can call it COVID.
Great.
You can call it the scam of 2020. I mean, I'm pretty much fine with anything.
I like the backwards.
The DVOC pandemic.
Well, we refer to those people as COVIDians that we got from
yes.
Mike from
Vegas?
Legion. No, Legion. Mike Matthews.
Yeah, Mike Matthews.
Good last name.
Yeah,
Muscle for Life.
Muscle
also
for
a
Life.
good name.
We had him on the podcast, and he kept referring to running into COVIDians,
I
was like, "What?" And then I realized, I was like, "He's like, yeah, the people that really take this shit seriously are COVIDians." And I was like,
great.
"God, it's a great fucking term."
Yeah, it's so good. Ugh. But I think, so Wimberley used to feel so far from Austin or from New Braunfels or from anywhere, because it's like an hour drive from Austin. And I think when people started working remote because of the pandemic, they're like, let me see where I can venture out to. And they found Wimberley. Like, what the hell? But I was living in Austin when 2020, when the pandemic hit. And I played the game for 2 weeks like everybody else did.
Yeah. It was 3 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah.
2 years later.
Yeah. And then I read a bunch of stuff during that 2 weeks of hanging out at home. And I was like, y'all, something's off here. My gut is like big flags going off. And when stuff didn't open up, nothing, like I was living on the east side. Basically, I walked to the Power Athlete Symposium in 2018 when it was at Native Hostel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the last one, huh?
No,
2019.
2019. And then we had one at the East Austin Athletic Club.
Oh, that's right.
That's
Remember, that was the 3 venues, which was a place on Congress that we went to. Remember that where the
something Congress.
there was it was something.
Not just a clever name.
Yeah, it was like 2020 Congress or something, and then we did East Austin. Then we did here, East Austin. Remember, it was 3 locations.
Dang,
it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
We love to complicate things.
And then so much so we never wanted to do it again, and then COVID hit, which gave us a great excuse. I was like, we couldn't do it again.
Yeah, it's exactly like why I didn't go back to in-person stuff. I'm still figuring that out.
Well, let's get into that. So a lot has changed and evolved as you as a business owner and the CEO of BirthFit, but you still have the same mission.
Yeah.
So let's start with the mission and then speak to how you've evolved and continue down that path.
Sure. So I would say our overall mission at BirthFit is to cultivate a connection and awareness within women's bodies so that they can develop a deeper trust within themselves. And we do this through now virtual programming, all online, general strength and conditioning programming that's nervous system based, nervous system focused, so that we're not crushing somebody's system. It's a different feeling training with us as opposed to like going into a CrossFit gym and getting a WOD in, or training for your sport specific thing, where it could leave you on the ground like, oh, that was intense. We want women walking out of the gym or out of the studio feeling strong, feeling empowered, and having that deep trust within their body so it can carry over into their daily lives and then over into labor and birth and into parenting in the 4th trimester and beyond. So overall mission, but yeah, things have changed. We used to host seminars like once and twice a month, which is wild. And when 2020 hit, we had seminars lined up, and we actually had a summit lined up. Like we used to do a summit every year, and we were starting to sell tickets for that.
When was the last time the summer that I spoke at? Was it 19?
19, yeah.
I just remember a lot of women like snapping.
Snapping, that's their inside voice snapping.
I do got a funny story about that event.
Well, there's multiple funny stories about that event.
I know, I won't tell that one, but
yeah, that's
the bathroom.
Because there was a funny story that he brings up all the time.
Yeah, at the event, there's
I would like to hear it off air.
men's and women's restrooms, and then I just thought rules were in play, but this was 99% women at this event, and so essentially there was this long line for the bathroom, and I'm like looking at him like, that sucks. They were utilizing both bathrooms as women's bathrooms. And I just cut a line of maybe 20 women and
like,
just go beamed right into the men's room, and then come out and then like
get all these glares.
Like, it's just like out of a movie. You have this line of women, and then everybody's like leaning outside of it and just glaring at me. I'm like, I can feel.
Well, okay. First of all, there was no signs up.
Well, there was a men's room.
Yeah, a men's room. And being like, I should be glaring at you guys for using my place. And on top of it, I don't care if you guys are in there anyway. I'm like, once you get married and have a bunch of kids, like the amount of times I've been in the bathroom, somebody's kicked the door.
All bathrooms are open.
Yeah, I'm like, go use your own bathrooms, you hobos. I accuse my kids of being hobos all the time.
But a fun event, so.
Yeah, that was the last one. And so basically when 2020 hit and everybody said, no more live events, stay 6 feet apart, wear a mask, all that bullshit. Well, we had to cancel and basically pause everything that was happening in person. And so we did a huge pivot. I had to let go of our teaching team, which was like an emotional thing for me. There was eight women that did this part-time, and to sit them down and be like, I don't know what's happening, but we can't pay y'all anymore. So you don't have a job right now with BirthFit. We broke the team down all the way to, there's 4 of us. And then we completely put everything online. So whereas it used to be 50-50, as far as like revenue in from online stuff to on-person stuff, now it's like 99% online. And all the in-person activities, so this is kind of cool, all the in-person activities happen through the BirthFit leaders and the BirthFit coaches, depending on what's going on in their own geographical area. So people would reach out and be like, are there classes happening in LA? I'm like, yeah, but you got to contact so-and-so. I can't broadcast it, on the social media right now. So like in LA, there are awesome underground classes happening. In New Jersey, in New York, same thing. But they would have to find, it was like, get the contact.
Sounds like going to a rave in the 90s where you're like, find the guy with the egg and they'll tell you where it is.
Totally. That in a nutshell, everything went online. Yeah. And in the meantime, I opened a chiropractic office.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So being stuck, I call it stuck, being stuck for like 2 weeks or 2 months, however long people were stuck. But I realized I was like, I cannot be stuck at home like this. This is driving me crazy. I need to be doing something. So I called, I looked into getting my, going to plumber's school.
Nice.
And I was like, there's trades that need to happen. Those always got to happen,
dude.
And let's talk about that in a little bit, because that's.
I have a buddy who's a plumber. He's done work here for us. Like he put the water line in for our bathroom.
Smart.
And all I know is he has a very nice truck, and he constantly forwards me pictures of his new boat.
Oh, I thought you were going to say pictures of the shit he's got to deal with.
No,
that's what you get as a doula.
Yeah, well, he's got all like the young plumber, like apprentices working for him, but he'll like once a month text me, hey, I just got a new boat and this, and I'm like, fucking plumbers,
awesome.
man.
Yeah.
I mean, shit's always got to break, literally.
Totally. And remember what happened when everything froze? Like
Oh, yeah.
Plumbers had jobs for months.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like looking into that. And then I even like reached out to some local farmers. And was, do you need an intern? Like things, random things like that. But then I was like, okay, Lindsay, like you're reaching here. What are you called to do? And, I came back to Austin. I started being an associate at a chiropractic office here. And basically I reached back out to Morgan. Morgan's her name. And I'm actually going to her wedding tomorrow. But I said, are you open? Like, do you want to open? And she was like, yes, I want to open. And figured out we had the same values, same beliefs. And she was like, I'm tired of being closed. I said, let's do it. I'll help you out. I'll, be your support, whatever you need. I can be the voice. I can be the loud one that's like, don't wear a mask, that sort of thing. So we opened her office back up, and I was an associate there. And one of the reasons I wanted to be an associate there was because I loved her practice model, and she concentrates on the nervous system for like anyone, whether you're an adult, a child, pregnant woman, anybody that's coming in. We take nervous system based scans and look at what's happening in the nervous system and then make care plans based on that. So I wanted to see that in motion because I hadn't shadowed anybody. I hadn't gone to anybody. It's kind of using newer technology in the chiropractic world, and loved it. We were open. We allowed people, if they wanted to wear a mask, they could come in and wear a mask. They could do whatever they wanted to do. We weren't going to be wearing masks. We were going to be touching people. We were going to be hugging people. And I would say, because this office is in Austin, there was about 50% right away that still wore masks. The other 50% were like, yes, thank God. And then slowly, because people saw us being normal, they slowly started taking off their mask. And we probably had maybe 1 or 2 a week within, by that fall of 2020, that were still wearing masks. Parents would come in and bring their kids, and they'd be like, this is the only normal place we can bring our kids and play, because we had a play area. And you could see some, even like a year later, parents that would bring their kiddos in that haven't been socialized, in a whole year. You could see kind of the detriment of what the pandemic had done to them, just in that short amount of time. So anyways, did that for a year and a half, and then opened an office in New Braunfels, Texas. And that's where I've been spending most of my time. And it's been awesome.
It's a pretty short drive from Wimberley to New Braunfels, isn't it?
It's about 40 to 45 minutes. Because in the last 2 or 3 years, New Braunfels has blown up, unfortunately, but fortunately, I guess.
Well, I used to drive down there and see Rob and Nikki. And just the amount of time since I was driving down there, I was like, oh my God. Like it went from like in probably 2 years time, like it was the point where I hadn't been down there in a few months, and I was driving and I got lost again. And I'm like, I don't recognize any.
I don't recognize anything.
And that's where you hail, right?
Yeah. So I grew up there. I went to high school in New Braunfels, Texas. Went to Canyon High School.
Is that the unicorns?
No, those are the Cougars. But when I was there was only 2 high schools. There was New Braunfels and there was Canyon. Now there's 5 or 6, and I can't even name them all.
Wow.
I know. So funny. Also, the pandemic, whatever. I ended up joining jujitsu because, like I used to take walks with Kirk Parsley.
Yeah.
I hit him up. I was like, what do you think about this pandemic? Let's talk. So.
Oh yeah.
We've had him on.
Don't even get Parsley started. Well, Doc used to come lift weights with us every day.
Yeah, that's what he said. So I would get filled in on how y'all were doing. And then he was like, why don't you just join SBG? I go down there. He only went down there like once a week, maybe once a month. But, so I joined the gym because they didn't believe, like a jiu-jitsu gym does not believe in DVOC. Like you sweat all over each other. You're in each other's personal space. So I joined that gym. I was driving to New Braunfels, working in Austin, but I was like basically living my life like, DVOC free. So finally, people kept asking me, where's a great chiropractic office, a nervous system based chiropractic office in New Braunfels? I was like, there's not one. Okay. God spoke to me, Lindsay, open an office. Let's do it.
Dude, you're killing me on what were you calling DVOC?
DVOC.
Because another Chelsea Hart one, we got the bye from Chelsea, but also she's like, yeah, we went out and we're searching for the DIOC. And I was like, she's like, she said that to me once. I'm like,
different.
I was like, the what?
Different.
And then she said it, and she's like, and then she spelled it out, and I was like, Oh, the Dioc. I get it. So when you said it, I was like instantly another Chelsea
Brought you
heart,
back.
like, bye, and the Dioc.
Oh God.
Which now actually, as you're saying it, I'm like, it has dual meanings. You're like, oh, dude,
Yeah.
we got Dioc'd in fucking 2020.
Yeah.
They fucking scammed us.
You introduced nervous system based chiropractic.
Bringing us back.
That's his job. He has a little notepad, and
Great.
it basically says, whenever we get off the rails, I got to bring it back. Yeah, he has his mantra.
Yeah, I have 10 commandments to follow. But nervous system, I'd never heard of this until essentially meeting you.
Yeah.
So what is the focus of, I thought it was just, hey, this is the, doctorate of chiro. Get your back cracked.
Yeah, totally. So I'll give you like my story of chiropractic, and it very much relates to this. So what drew me into chiropractic was the philosophy of chiropractic, which basically, in a nutshell, is the power that made the body can heal the body. When left with no interference, we optimize it, we get out of the way. The power that made the body can heal the body. We all have this beautiful innate intelligence in us. And, I believe that's God's gift. God shines down on us. Then we just, like a plant, just give it water and sunshine and it'll blossom. We can do the same. So you learn that, especially if you have really good philosophy classes in school, or you read the chiropractic green books, which are like special, or, anything from like Fred Barge. He's a great OG chiropractor. But then you get into chiropractic, and right out of school, you're trying to make money. And late in the 80s, early 90s, chiropractic was heavily driven by insurance and getting just reimbursements from insurance. And so chiropractors did make good money in the 80s and 90s from being in the insurance model. So there's some that got swooped up that way. And that's where chiropractic became a lot of like pain-based focus.
Well, and a lot of charlatans.
Yeah.
With the cracking, what I call the cracking jack.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, crack your neck, here's $20.
Yeah.
Like just give me the cracking jack.
Mm-hmm. And there's no specificity to that. Yeah. It's just like, it's almost like a drug. It releases a little bit of oxytocin, feel good hormones, and do it again. But there's no intention or specificity behind it. And so myself, after chiropractic school, I got drawn into the sports rehab world, which I love and, totally served its purpose with me. Like it helped me design everything within BirthFit as far as like programs and stuff go. And I had an awesome opportunity, down at the Olympic Training Center in San Diego, traveling with certain athletes, actors, actresses, and getting them ready for their stunts, performing, rehabbing, recovery, that sort of thing. But then there's always something drawing me back to the philosophy of chiropractic. But I personally myself, I could never articulate that as like, hey, trust me, like your body can do what it's designed to do, because we had no tools in chiropractic to show people. So enter this tool called the Cla Insight Scanner. And it is basically scans your nervous system. And we do 3 scans at our office. One, we test HRV, which is heart rate variability. Mm-hmm. And on the simplest scale, it measures the variation between heartbeats. And you want more variation because you're more adaptable, more resilient, stronger, faster, harder to kill. And, HRV is a great biomarker in that if you're wearing any of these things that are measuring HRV, you look at the HRV trends. If it's trending up, probably a great day to train. If it's trending down, your body's probably dealing with a little more stress as stimulus. Might not be such a great day to, run sprints or go for your PR, go for a back squat PR or whatever. So just being mindful of that. And, we utilize that within BirthFit, within our training, because it's really the only biomarker that makes any sense for pregnancy. So we measure that in our office. Then we also do neuromuscular fatigue scans in the form of like a thermal scan. So we're measuring kind of the heat in and around the spine. And then we do an EMG scan or an energy scan. And we say it's the equivalent of a heart EKG, but we're looking at how the nervous system takes in information through each of our eyes, like sight, smell, taste, hearing, and where it gets hung up as far as obstacles within the spinal levels, like traffic jams in LA is what, the metaphor I use. or in Austin now, or is it being distributed evenly? Are we using our energy efficiently, or are we just wasting our energy, at the top of our neck and nothing's getting down to the rest of our spine? So we look at that. And I do a ton of preconception consults, pregnancy, postpartum, and I've had a grip of preconception stuff. I did them virtual till we opened the office, but a lot of women and their husband, partners, boyfriends are, waking up to the kind of BS that is the Western medicine system. And they're realizing, okay, nothing is wellness care in that model. Like, it's all looking at individual organs or systems. So what looks at my body as a whole? Okay, well, the nervous system governs the body as a whole. And that influences your musculoskeletal system. So I say neuromusculoskeletal system, it influences your reproductive organs, breath, everything. So who takes care of the nervous system? Well, a nervous system-based chiropractor, not a pain-based chiropractor. So that's what brought me back to, I would say, the origin, the essence of chiropractic, and being able to show people these scans. And we do scans every 12 visits. So being able to show them their progress through just images, and people, images are so great for the visual. People resonate so well with that. Being able to show people their progress along with, being really intentional with our adjustments. So whenever somebody comes in, we may do more neurotonal stuff, which is, we say gentle, or, moving energy. Tex is giving me a funny look, but
just waving your hands around them.
Yeah, just checking their aura.
Well, Tex isn't a big believer in energy, and more importantly, in like mysticism. So like, you got to have a little bit of faith.
I am a big fan of Ghostbusters, but
that's a start.
I need to go in and like see these machines in action.
Well, it's like Dr. Bueller's stuff. Like his stuff is like, what I really appreciate about his is that it's like, muscle doesn't fire. I clear the muscle, and now the muscle fires. And it's really the only thing I've ever done. If I have something's fucked up, I go see Dr. Bob. I don't know if you know Bob, Dr. Bob Myers. Mm-mm. So he works with UT. He's a chiro.
Cool.
And if like I have a herniated disc in my neck, and I can like wake up one morning and be like, it's fucked up. And I'll call Bob, and Bob will go and like put some traction in, give me like, and kind of do a few adjustments, and it's fine.
Awesome.
And like, he's really good for like, if something's fucked up, I go see him specific for that. And other than that, if I feel pretty good. But I also know Dr. Bueller, who I've spent a ton of time with, told me that they have research, but unfortunately it's never been highly publicized, that if you see a chiropractor at least once a week, your chance of like injury and all these like mortality reduces by like 80%.
Yeah.
Just having somebody just do some basic like manipulation, movement of the body, like 80% of these illnesses end up disappearing.
Yeah.
I see that point, but I like specificity better. So I know the value of, hey, if you go exercise 60 minutes 3 times a week.
Sure.
But then I know, okay, if we get specific with said exercise, so I'm leaning and following and tracking
if you have
the specificity.
Scans, so what somebody does when they come to us, we scan them, design a care plan specific for them. And with, like, if let's say they're preconception, and I look at this and they want to get pregnant in the next year, like, oh my gosh, we need to clear some stuff out here. We may actually do 2 or 3 times a week initially, do some blood work, some hormone testing, some HTMA testing. So we're testing their hair tissue mineral analysis to see what they've been doing the previous 3 months.
What do you look for there?
So when
is that better than blood work?
Well, if you put them together, they're all good together. Now, I don't say one has weight over the other, but if your blood work, if you do just a regular blood chemistry, and
that's a snapshot in time. Blood work is a snapshot. When they do like the hair follicle stuff, now they can look at like environmental toxins over a long period of time. Yeah. So what's I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast, but I read Dr. Swan's book Countdown. I have was emotionally shook for about a week. Like to ask Chris, like I was like, I just don't even know if I want to go on in this world.
Well,
There's no hope for the human population.
Well, I mean, she pretty much established that we're endangered species.
Yeah, we are.
So we're over. So in 1960, the average family had 5 kids. Now we're down to less than 2.2 kids, I think is the number of the average person. So like in terms of declining population, we are classified as endangered species.
Yeah.
We're, what was it, like 60 to 80% less fertile than we were our grandparents. So the average male today is 60 to 80% less fertile than his grandfather. He produces like 1/10 the amount of sperm cells. Sex-binding globulin hormone, which for our grandparents was like maybe a 10, is now 70 to a 150, which is, that eats up free testosterone. I mean, the
testosterone.
environment, is like, I mean, and then you wonder,
because we spoke mostly about the male side of things. Did she speak on the female as well?
Oh, yeah, because where she pulled,
because you were just bringing up because it's 2 dudes talking about it.
Yeah, I'm not over there talking about birth rates in this, but like
maybe you were, and I was just zoned out. Bad energy.
Well, so since the beginning of time, any time that let's say a couple can't get pregnant, I guess emphasis and like the impetus has always been it's always been shouldered by the woman. We can't get pregnant because of you. So what she did is she went in and looked at all these sperm banks, and and what's great about this is like historical data that they have because they have to test the sperm to see if it's viable. And so they were able to pull like 60, 80 years of whatever she had. And the amount of male fertility problems have like exponentially exploded. She also talked about like autism being tied to the father, not to the mother. But then also, like I think a woman is born with like, is it 2 to 3 million eggs? So this is something I talk to my daughters about, which is blows their minds. So in the womb, right? Yeah. Like as babies, they are like the eggs that are inside them are the ones that are set within them. So I'm like, technically,
all that they'll get. Yeah,
that's all you'll get. But what's wild is that like they're actually conceived inside your mom. So like they're the byproduct. Like, so it's such a weird, but then my daughter's like, ugh, disgusting.
Stop talking, Dad.
Yeah. But, so when I was listening to this, she said that like, women are born with a certain amount. And like, there's this idea of like, over the course of time, like, even though let's say, your monthly deal, like one gets expelled, like others just fucking go away. Mm-hmm. And, she was saying that like 40, 50 years ago, women in their like 40s and 50s were more fertile than women are today in their 20s.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So like, like you'll hear these stories of like, I was reading, what is it? Hilo Gracie, the inventor of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, had like, 29 kids or something, right? Like had a gang of kids. He and his wife,
fittest man on the planet.
Yeah. Like had kids from like teens into his 50s. I think he had Horace Gracie when he was like 54. So like, I mean, people have had like huge amounts of kids over a period of time, and they're like, this doesn't exist anymore. Just because the fertility issues, like, when you looked at like the medical journals from even 30 years ago, the geriatric pregnancy was anything over the age of 28.
Yeah.
And now they've had to change this, but like the BPAs, the plastics, John Sapolsky and I have this like, John Sapolsky was on the podcast. I don't remember if he was up.
Yeah, January 2021, or 2021 DC guy.
Yeah, but he's getting his PhD in marine biology in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So we have this like ongoing text thread where he just sends me end of the world type of shit, and then I send it back to him.
Super uplifting.
But as I was reading through I got the book, I started reading it, and then just started listening to the audiobook, and then finished the audiobook, and then went back and reread the book because I was like, I have to be absorbing this in a different way.
Yeah.
And I was pretty much bummed out for about a month, realizing that like we're arguing about all this other bullshit in the world, and like the 800-pound gorilla in the room is like, we cannot reproduce.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've effectively sterilized ourselves. So all these people that are complaining about this and like, and they're like, well, there's 7 million people or 7 billion people on the planet. We've never had this many. And I'm like, well, it's because we figured out how to keep women and children alive in childbirth. Mm-hmm. That's the only difference. Mm-hmm. Like the amount, and Lindsay probably knows these numbers way better than I, but like 100 years ago, what was the mortality rate of women and children in birth?
Well, okay, I don't know these numbers, but it wasn't, so 100 years ago, we were giving birth in homes, and anybody that, I want to say it was like, I'll make up a number, but, when it got moved to the hospital, the numbers didn't change that much. The infant mortality rate, instead, I'm bringing in infant mortality rate. The infant mortality rate, they said, would get lower when we brought it into the hospital, but it really did not. It did not shift. The needle did not move. But the maternal mortality rate did get better with things like washing hands and using
sterilize.
Things like that.
So the biggest thing we figured out is like how to like fix people within like acute stuff. Like you get shot with a gun, you get hit by a car. I believe Western medicine can fix you and you go to the hospital. Anything that looks like managed care, or more importantly, like chronic illness, we've completely fucked this. But we've figured out how to, like, people that should have died, like, we've extended their lives.
Their life expectancy.
So like now we're at 7 billion people, and we're like, oh, we've never had this many people on the planet. I'm like, well, I mean, Japan just had a deal where now they're paying couples to have children.
I saw that.
So if in Japan, if you get married and have children, they will give you a stipend and a place to live. And there's like no takers.
What?
So what dude,
John, I gotta go.
Japan. So
Bring
Japan
power athletes to
is
Japan.
having terrible problems with reproduction, like to the point where they're like scratching their heads and they're like, we're not going to make it 2 generations. So, I mean, that one, it's happening in like all these different countries. I mean, the doc that was wrote that book, Countdown, it's probably the scariest, most chilling thing I've read in recent times.
Yeah. Dr. Swan was on Rogan podcasts. Yeah. So if anybody wants like a Cliff Notes version.
It was about a year ago.
Yeah.
And so I read her books. I listened to the audiobook. I went back, reread the book, and then I listened to the Rogan thing. And the one thing which was pretty upsetting about the Rogan deal is Joe actually says, he's like, this is fucking frightful. Like, how come nobody's talking about this? We need to get this information. And I haven't heard about it anywhere.
Right.
So
we should go after her.
Well, I've sent her actually, I hit her on direct message.
Awesome.
Like, I love, like,
I'm pretty good at guessing emails. So
I really enjoyed your book, like, and asked her a few questions and she never responded. Not that she would, but I feel like we should try to get her on to discuss this a little bit because it's such a monumental deal. So, long story short, to get back, as you're going through and working with people, doing hair samples, blood and all that, I'm wondering about like environmental toxins, like the BPAs. I mean, it feels like so much of what's in the environment is effectively sterilizing us.
I would say more so the environment than anything. And what you put in and on your body has so much influence in your overall health. And that's men and women. And I'll just insert here, like my degree at Texas A&M was in biology. So I studied a little bit of evolution and, if we're talking about the future, even the talk around, and dare I say like the social conditioning around, what's being accepted as man or woman, like they're trying to, I guess, brainwash us into making these fertility obstacles acceptable. And, I don't want to, I hate calling it infertility because they're fertility obstacles. Like we're designed to, like a small percentage of us, less than 5%, are truly, truly infertile. And now it's all due to what we put into and on our bodies. And so once I start working with a woman, once I start working, ideally I start working with the woman and then she brings her husband, boyfriend, partner in, whoever, and we start clearing up their system, detoxing, drainage pathways opened, nervous system flowing. More times than not, within 3 months, they get pregnant just because you need a little support like that. Sometimes it takes a little longer, and usually then we get a little bit deeper, what's going on spiritually, emotionally, what kind of connection do you have with this earth? Are you ready to have a kid? Is your significant other ready to have a kid? Or are there any type of like mental blocks showing up? So we start there. Then if I need to, like in that same breath, I'll go into Mercier Therapy. So I'm also one of the only trained people in Central Texas in Mercier Therapy. There's 3 people in Texas, 3 of us women. One's in Houston.
What exactly?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't never
for our listeners.
So, there's one in Houston, one in like Dallas area, and then myself. And Mercier Therapy is, like gynovisceral manipulation. So deep organ work. So I basically, if to equate it to like, mobility.
Kicking techs in the nuts.
Yeah.
Repeatedly. Hey, we need to do a little bit of organ manipulation, so I'm going to kick you in the balls from behind. Text 3 times.
Your organs are on the outside.
Because when you get kicked in the nuts from behind,
It's more hilarious.
well, that, and you also guarantee to get both nuts.
So it's not like sometimes after a Mercier session, it might feel like that. But I basically get really deep around the uterus, the ovaries, any of the fascia that's in and around the pelvic bowl, and make sure that's moving. Because if you think about it, a lot of people have had appendicitis or surgery for appendix. There's fibroids on uteruses, laparoscopy surgeries like that.
My wife had endometriosis.
Yeah,
so
so
she had
I would
to have
do
a
that.
surgery that would go in, and I think that's what, like scar tissue on the ovaries.
Yeah.
So they went through her belly button and did that.
Yeah. So breaking up the scar tissue, making sure that there's no adhesions, like, just like somebody would like an ACL surgery, like making sure that moves. Same thing. We want blood flow in the.
I went to a doc that did basically injected fluid underneath the skin to get like the skin to pull away and to try to like do scar therapy.
Yeah.
So they injected the scar to try to because what happens, the scar will sometimes stick down on the fascia, so they try to release it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was hokey as shit. And the minute that he did it, it like popped, and I had this instant sense of relief, and I was like, okay, that ain't bullshit.
Yeah. I use a little castor oil and some other oils, but
no, he straight
That
up
works.
he straight up took saline and
Awesome.
like blew it up and like the knee. I was like, holy fuck, dude. And he's like, don't worry. I'm like, oh, all right.
you're in good hands.
Yeah. The amount of times I've had doctors say don't worry means I actually worry about everything. I'm like, oh,
Yeah. But that's what Mercier Therapy is. So usually, if you, like we were talking about before, if you can remove all interferences, all obstacles, the pathways are open. But I would say a lot of people are waking up to kind of what's in their food, where they're getting their food from, what's in their environment as far as like women and the makeup products they wear, the lotions they wear, the oils, things like
She
that.
talked about those, called them endocrine disruptors. So it was like EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals. EDCs.
Yes. Even in the products that males use. So I've gone through like all of Lance's products. I'm like, garbage. That was garbage. Like,
What are some examples?
so even just like Dove soap, go look at the ingredients on Dove soap, and you'll see preservatives, things like like red dye number 40 in all, like, that's in food stuff.
So years ago, so I got a whole bunch of tattoos that you guys can't see. Because I got a huge, massive tramp stamp that goes from my butt to my shoulders. The tattoo guy was like, "Hey, use this Dr. Bronner's stuff on the tattoos; it'll heal faster." And I've used Dr. Bronner's since 2001, 2002.
Awesome.
And and I mean back then it was like super hippie shit.
Yeah.
So you had to go to Whole Foods, and like there was they didn't have they basically sold you a bottle and you had to bring your bottle back because it was Berkeley. And so I had to would bring in the empty bottle, and the lady would bequeath me this stuff. But on the bottle there was crazy ass fucking like chants and prayers, and that this was gonna and then they ended up changing it all because I think they got sued. But it was wacky spiritual stuff. So you're in the shower reading the bottle, and you're in there for 20 minutes. My roommate's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like,
just chanting.
I'm in here reading the bottle on this shit. And
don't come in.
So we've used that Dr. Bronner's, and then as I was going through all these things, I'm like, oh man, I wonder if I escaped because all the fragrance. It's actually the fragrance is what fucks you up, and it's actually not only absorbs through the skin, but it's actually the smell, the pheromone. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna fuck this up. But or is a huge, because you're taking it in through multiple senses. Yeah. Our skin is our largest organ in our body, but also the smell and disrupts brain chemistry.
Well, and even I think Dr. Swan talks about this, maybe even on Rogan, but somewhere. When you mask the smell or change the smell, you're attracted to a different mate.
Mm. Whoa.
And so think about all the women that have been on hormonal birth control. That changes the smell.
Yeah.
So that may not be the mate you're compatible with reproducing with.
Well, the way I knew my wife, so my wife knew she was pregnant, and for two reasons. One, she walked in the house and the smell of coffee made her sick. And actually, as I was cooking steaks on the barbecue, the smell of cooked meat on barbecue wanted to make her throw up. And I was like, because I imagined, and then she's like, something's wrong. And then she was pregnant. And I always imagine, you're going to get pregnant, we're going to fucking eat. I just figured we were going to eat, and everything I cooked made her sick, smell sick. And the only thing that did make it was like ice cream. She's like, ice cream makes her, and I'm not a big ice cream guy. So I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, thought we were going to be like eating like meat and like chicken. No, didn't happen. But then she got pregnant with Cash, my son, and completely different. She's like, coffee smells good, steak smell good.
Different pregnancy.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, twin daughters will absolutely fucking destroy whatever she gets. It's way too much estrogen. But like that's an interesting one on pheromones and smell.
It
like
totally
the amount of stories that I've read or heard from like anecdotally from other men where like women get pregnant and so like the smell of my husband makes me want to throw up.
Oops.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not good.
Yeah.
Now you're in this bitch.
Yeah, you're stuck there.
Yeah.
Co-parenting together.
How do you manage that one?
I don't know.
Oh, you're like, okay, I don't know.
With co-parenting?
Well, no, but I mean, like, this is something that's really struck me. Like, I never really thought about this. And like, there's a whole bunch of, I've come to the conclusion that until you enter into this, there's a whole bunch of questions that you would have never thought to ask. It's almost
parenting.
like just like in pregnancy, having kids, like everybody, at least as a logical person, when I'm looking from the outside, you kind of look A, B, C, D, E. And then you realize it's like A, G, B, C, D, Z, like it jumps around. Yeah. But everybody, I think, and I'm sure you've dealt with this, like there's this idea that like, women take birth control, because they don't want to get pregnant. And then the minute that all of a sudden they get married or their life changes and I want to have children, I'll stop taking the birth control and I'll get pregnant instantly.
Yeah.
And that isn't the case.
That doesn't happen. Well, just hormonal birth control. I did a BirthFit podcast just on this because it wrecks your hormones and depletes you of nutrients and vitamins like no other. So you're starting from a depleted state. So the best thing you can do to get off, let's say you're taking hormonal birth control right now and you're getting married or y'all want to start having kids in the next year or two, get off of it now. Start replenishing the nutrients and minerals you have or you don't have, but within your body. And like B vitamins are a huge one. Minerals are completely depleted. Potassium,
so
sodium.
the extra estrogen strips the body of like zinc, magnesium, iron, manganese, copper, everything.
All of it. And it tricks your body into thinking tricks your body into thinking you're pregnant. And so there's a fake bleed. And that's not even a real bleed. So once you get off the birth control, I would say allow your body, just let it be for 3 cycles. Let it just kind of level out on its own and see what it's going to do. You're probably like, if you had painful periods before, you're probably going to have some of those. You might have clots released.
Does the birth control typically reduce the severity of the period?
Well, some women get on birth control initially because of painful periods. Like back in high school or early college, that's what they went to the doctor for, and that's what they got prescribed. Painful periods, heavy periods, in their defense, the doctors, all they had in their toolbox was hormonal birth control.
And then you have a bunch of men.
Yeah, you have a bunch of men
that are like, well, my wife's a bitch this time of year. Let me just give you something. Not a problem.
Yeah.
Which seems totally fucked to me.
And and they didn't even examine lifestyle, nutrition, movement, stressors, sleep, none of that. So getting off hormonal birth control, let it be for 3 months. Grab the book, The Fifth Vital Sign, and start kind of like troubleshooting your own period. The best thing you can do is add more minerals, add nutrients. And right away, I'll tell people, grab like desiccated organ supplements. Get on those. Get on minerals. Take an element daily. Trace minerals is also a good one. Just a squirt in your water. But you're so depleted. And if you were to get pregnant, it would be really hard because pregnancy, once you're done with pregnancy and you're in the postpartum side, pregnancy depletes you of at least 10% of your minerals. And then if you're trying to breastfeed postpartum, you're going to need more than any amount of protein you needed in pregnancy just to survive and thrive postpartum.
Yeah, no, I my wife exclusively breastfed my twins for 6 months. And I watched that poor woman like sucked her life force out.
Yeah.
Like I
Literally.
I to the point where she was eating everything in sight. Like I would go buy her these chocolate honeycomb. It was like honeycomb, like in dark chocolate, and I'd buy her like a pound, and she would just like sit there with these like two things, just sucking her life force, just crushing this stuff, and she just shrunk.
You can't get enough food.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so all these, and like I hate generalizing, especially for something that I don't go through, but with like pregnant women, a lot of women are like, oh, I had trouble losing the baby weight. And my first question has always been like, did you breastfeed? No. And I'm like, well, if you did, you would have sucked all that baby weight and you would have got down to your fighting weight in like probably 3 months time.
Right. And what, like to that, like, why do you need to lose the baby weight in that first year? That's there for a reason. Usually it's there because they're saving energy stores, nutrients for a baby, for breast milk. But exactly, if you didn't follow nature's plan, then nature's going, what the fuck?
Well, I mean, so breastfeeding, my mom breastfed me. And I remember when she told my grandmother that she was going to breastfeed, my grandmother was like, ooh, sick, like gross. Like poor people do that. Like it's low class. Yeah. So there was this idea that like breastfeeding, like this is hippie, totally low class stuff. And so like in the 70s, that was like very hippie stuff. And then all of a sudden it probably like fell out of favor. And then within, maybe the last 10, 15 years, it's become more in vogue again, where we're realizing like, why the fuck are we artificially buying? But then you look at like how we were inundated with campaigns and this, and then the formula companies were giving the formula to doctors and they were pushing it like they use the same drug protocols, and then it's this. And like, it just blows my mind. We just did.
So August is Breastfeeding Awareness Month. And we certainly made a few posts that triggered some people. But you're exactly right. Like the women of our society, your wife, my sisters, whoever, they were undermined basically by big government, big pharma, and radical feminism. Radical feminism to get back in the workforce. That was the reason my mom didn't breastfeed me. She was like, I got to get back to work. I have an awesome job. Big pharma and big government, as we've learned through the pandemic, that they're basically in bed with each other. And, there's a great book called The Big Letdown that goes through all of this and, how growth charts were originally done on just babies fed formula. So they plumped up and like so much quicker than breastfed babies, where breastfed babies are a lot leaner. But in the grand scheme of things, they thrive, with also less illnesses. The moms that breastfeed have less risk of ovarian cancer, breast cancer.
Also, the connection between the mom, it was really interesting to like watch as a dad, my wife breastfeeding in this, and like the connection in this, and she would like, it's a lot of like as a parent, as a dad, you realize that at least from my side, like I always joke that like I was the assistant coach all those years. Yeah. Like that's like time for bonding. And like I feel bad for women that don't go through that because they never really get a chance to bond with the child the way they should. And like there's like a ton of bonding stuff. And then I guess as you get later, it goes. But like, I mean, this is how our species has evolved and lived.
Survived.
For hundreds of thousands, millions of years, depending on who you believe. If you're,
absolutely.
Rich Froning, 6,000 years ago is when this world came to fruition. So he can't be a paleo. But I mean, we do know that, and also I believe did you tell me this, that religious or that Christians believe that God put fake dinosaur bones there to fool people into believing the earth was older as a test? Didn't you tell me this, or was that Luke?
Definitely Luke. I'm camp intelligent design, and then we can't put our calendar onto the advent of the world.
Interesting.
Wait, explain that. What do you mean, our calendar?
Well, to say 7 days a week, no, it's representative of a amount of time that we can conceptualize to put to paper to this.
Do you know why we have the calendar the way we do?
So whether it's millions of years where we can paint that picture as a day within the representation rather than a million years.
Well, the Sumerians.
So an intelligent design to present us the opportunity that each of us are special and have this potential we can bequeath to the world.
Oh, I agree with that. I mean, the intelligent design thing does make sense if you look at it from the fact that probably we are the aliens. Mm-hmm. Right? Like
I like alien talk right now.
I
I meant to bring a foil hat for other reasons,
so,
but this.
So think about this. Like whenever people are like, "Oh, do you believe in like aliens and the whole deal?" And I'm always like, "Yeah, we are proof. We are the aliens."
You're talking Scientology right now.
I mean, that piece actually makes more sense to me.
The volcano in Scientology of
Ron
the aliens.
I don't know about that, but I do know that like if a let's say just a ship pulled up and people that came out and were like, "Oh, we're at this other planet and we just deposited you morons here X amount of years ago to see this sea monkey experiment come to life."
Like the British in Australia?
Yeah. Or like anywhere else in the world. Like that to me would be a better explanation of this thing than there was like some magical being floating in the sky above who's up there like the creator pulling strings. Like I'm just waiting for a big ship to show up and be like, "Yeah, you guys were the outcast sea monkeys. We wanted to see what would happen." That feels more realistic to me than anything.
For more on the
This
sea
is
monkey
awesome.
theory, listen to our episode with Brian Saunders, because that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, he had a good one, but like all this stuff, and this is where I have a tough time. Like I think that there is a rational thought, or at least I believe there's rational thought. Like I can hear something and think, does that seem crazy? Yeah. And a lot of times whenever I hear, whether it be like, like we did, like our children were born in a hospital and the whole thing felt wrong. Like it felt weird. It felt this like cut off. I'm like, this isn't how this this feels very money driven.
Yeah.
Like it's like when you have your son, they're like, there's like a list and they're like, "Oh, these are all the things they charge you for." And they cut the umbilical cord and they circumcise and they do all this. And then they hand you the bill and you're like, "So wait a minute, if I don't have them circumcised and I don't do this and this, the bill's reduced?" And they're like 100%. So I was like, "Well, don't do any of that." Right. Why? Well, I'm like, well, shit, dude. Like if it's like, I go to like, if we go somewhere and order something, I don't get an appetizer. Like I'm not ordering dessert. Like it just felt really just this weird.
They take the sacred out of it.
Yeah. And then if you ask anybody, people are like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
This is just how it's done. And that to me is whenever somebody just kind of like, "Well, this is how it's always been done. We never question it." That's when I start questioning shit.
Yeah, because it hasn't always been done like that.
No. Well,
maybe a generation or two, but now we're dealing with the problems, of, birth in a hospital, 90% of birth happening in a hospital, not breastfeeding, the environmental toxins, not knowing our food source, things like that.
Dude, my son got a staph infection in his belly button at the hospital. And that so Cassie was home for just a few days and got staph in his belly button. And that came from the hospital.
Yeah.
And then ended up going back in the NICU, and he was in there for 15 days getting pumped full of antibiotics. And, gut bacteria has always been an issue since then. But like that was a huge issue. And I remember we were there and I'm like, this whole thing feels wrong. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad that there's other people like you that are doing this, that are giving women other viable options, because there wasn't any other options. Yeah. This is just what we did.
This is what we did. And honestly, that's what, whenever I started down this path, I was like, there's got to be a different way. Because
was there a spark, a moment? Was it in Cairo school? Was it post?
Well, in Cairo school, you're exposed to a lot. Like, actually, half of my class, there was about 6 to 8 Mormons in there, and from Utah, and they have their babies at home. Yeah. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? How did y'all do that? Weren't y'all scared?
Well,
and
they
like,
no. They also have people within the church who their job is to bring babies into this world. So like you
their
call
own midwives.
Yeah, their own midwives. So you call like, their version of 911 and those people show up because they have so many children that like it's, and they, smaller communities in this, like it just fits for what they've done within their deal. Yeah. And Dr. Bueller's got a gang of kids and, obviously he's Mormon. But yeah, him talking about like, the church was really good at assessing doctors or people in the community that they viewed as having some form of like skill beyond other people. Like that person's a skilled healer. He's in the church now. Like he always tells the story of and I'm going to butcher this because I can't remember the doctor's name, but when he was a young doctor within the church, he went to go meet with this other doctor who the church had assessed had some special skill. And when he came in, the entire, and I always get goosebumps when I think about this, but the entire room was covered with pictures of kids, like little kids and this. And he went in and he's like, are these all the kids you birthed? And he's like, no, these are all the kids that I've worked with. And what he could do is kids were born with Down syndrome or disfigured. He could go in and do physical manipulations and fix their faces. So he was showing before and afters, like the kid had Down syndrome and now he looks normal. And I know how to manipulate and push on their faces and do this whole kind of chiropractic manipulation.
Wow. And
he said, dude, like as Doc Buehler told me the story, like you hear these things as a parent because we were talking about my son's type 1, like you're dealing with this and like the neuroblastoma stuff just launched. And I'm like, we're, as you know, Tex, we go through this every year with the neuroblastoma and Wade's Army. But like you hear these harrowing stories of these parents and these kids, and you're just like, you just want your kid to have a chance to be normal.
Yeah.
Cash, we're up here talking about his blood sugar and like, Dad, is this going to be forever? And you're like, no, like maybe we'll find a solution for this.
I don't have that answer.
Yeah, I don't have that answer, but like you'll always be normal. Or like, like a kid is born disfigured or this. And when I talked to Doc Buehler, he's like, the Mormons and the church were real good about finding people that could fix these problems, and then the problem is in conventional medicine, we just kind of go, we can't give them a pill.
Yeah, we can't put a drug on it.
Yeah, like there's no drug to fix this. There's no pill. So we basically have gone into this idea of pharmacology to fix every problem instead of like, that's why the Bernstein protocol we use with my son manages most of his insulin and most of his problems through diet and exercise and this. And the American Diabetes Association thinks that's fucking heresy.
Yeah.
I mean, like as I was sitting in the children's hospital, which does a great job in terms, he was in AK, his blood sugar was high. They save him in that. But then in terms of managing it, they were like, this is how you calculate insulin for the amount of food. And I was like, well, you're not calculating for protein. And they were like, protein's not protein doesn't cause an insulin response. And I'm like, so you don't think protein's insulinogenic? I was like, I've tested my blood sugar. Like I've worn a CGM. I know exactly what it does. I can tell you exactly what 100 grams of protein does to my blood. And he's like, we don't calculate for protein. So we only calculate for carbs. And I'm like, well, then how do you ever effectively manage this? Yeah. And like, well, we just have to give them enough insulin to cover 50 grams of carbohydrates. And that's what our goal is. And I'm like, for a 5-year-old and for a 50-year-old, it's the same. Oh. So it's like, so for all of these ailments and these things, like as a parent, you just want your child to live a normal life, and whatever normal is, we've basically completely altered the reality of what like I know is normal, what the listeners are knowing is normal, what you know, what like, and this is where we get into it. What I was trying to get back to this long belabored point, which is like, I like to think that I'm a fairly rational individual that can listen to information and discern whether or not that sounds batshit crazy or not. And the information that's coming at me that people are swallowing as normal is complete fucking horseshit. And I deal with this on a daily basis, whether it be in the training space, whether it be in the health space, which would be in the food space, which would be politics. Yeah. Like, where's the non-fucking crazy thing? I don't know if you saw the Biden talk standing up there, like V for Vendetta. Yeah. You've seen V for Vendetta.
Well, yes, and two, we can go back and put this in training terms. So the inverse relationship between stress and logic in competition. So imagine now there is stress of parents and childs and problems and issues, and you have a very high stress tolerance, and you're able to handle those. Maybe there's people out there that aren't able to, and they're just faced with a stressful situation. So they throw out the life preserver and then make the decision based off the information that's directed at.
I never fault a parent for making the best decision they have with the information available to them. And the problem comes down to like, years ago we had Jim Swartz from the Charlie Foundation. Did I mess his last name up? He was the director.
Jim Abrams.
The
director of Airplane. Writer and director.
And also The Naked Gun. So we didn't know this. So we had him on for the Charlie Foundation. The Charlie Foundation uses ketogenic diets to manage epilepsy.
Awesome.
And this guy started this deal because his son was epileptic. They were at UCLA in the process of getting him a frontal lobotomy to remove because he was having so many.
3 years old. Young. Yeah,
3 years old. They were going to remove a part of his brain because he was having so many seizures. So he goes into the UCLA library and is there for like 2 days straight, pulling all this information, and finds ketogenic diets were used to manage epilepsy in the 1800s. Comes back, let's try this. Puts him on traditional, very ketogenic diet, like high fat,
Yeah.
low, zero carb, very low, moderate to low protein. And they obeyed. And he basically saves his son's life.
Awesome.
And starts this Charlie Foundation. So at the time we were, started Wade's Army. We were, ketogenic diets have always been interesting to me because I've used them to, for, post NFL concussion, CTE, whatever you want to call it. I used the ketogenic diet to kind of fix myself, or at least start the process of fixing. So we have him on the podcast, and the dude's super switched on, really funny. And I Googled his name, and all of a sudden it comes up that he wrote Airplane and Naked Guns. And my brother and I's favorite movie is Airplane. So, but long story short, there's an individual who was presented with information, and the outcome and what they suggested was not what he was willing to do.
Yeah.
So he took it upon himself to find a solution. And this is what I've offered. I mean, Jim Abrams, classic. And I still remember the podcast. So I got another thing to tell you. I remember that podcast like it was yesterday. And I remember him, and I remember myself saying, like, you are the best example of what I hope for every parent. And what I hope for myself is that I will not go gentle into this good night, that if there is something that's going to harm my child, I will be the fucking shining force that protects him and allows him to flourish. Yeah. Rogan had Mark Zuckerberg on the podcast, which is funny because I was driving with my daughter and we were listening to it. And she's like, who's this fucking Mark Zuckerberg guy?
Who's this nerd?
Yeah, she's like, this guy's a total nerd. And I was like, Facebook, he's pretty smart. But he talked about the problems that they're getting into with VR and virtual reality. And so he was talking about they're developing these glasses that you can wear, that you can have, kind of a VR virtual experience reality. And he said the massive problem that people have is that our memories, and he got into how memories are constructed. Our memories are constructed in a 3-dimensional model. So you're sitting across from me, you're sitting here, we're in this room, Antonio's over there, fucking around on Instagram.
Hey, keep going.
Oh.
Keep going.
Oh, so, he talks about this like 3D model in terms of like learning and memory imprinting. And he said, he goes, if nothing changes in a model, you can't remember the incident. So he goes, for example, if you're on a Zoom screen and you're talking to somebody on Zoom and I'm sitting here and you're sitting here and we're both wearing black t-shirts and we're drinking coffee and it's the same time in this, he goes, based upon the construct of our memories, you cannot distinguish and remember any form of event that happens, which is what has exactly happened to me on this podcast, where we have these meaningful conversations and they all kind of melt into one.
We're in the same thing.
And then we meet people because we have branding. And if I don't, Harry sends me hate mail. But
it's part of the tenets.
Yeah, it's part of our mantras. But what he came down to is that for the construct of memories to work and for you to feel like something has to change. And the problem we get into with whether it be Zoom meetings or VR and everything, that if everything is static and doesn't change, you can have an interaction with no memory of it. And so something that they're fighting for the VR and this virtual reality is that there has to be a way for you to see something different, change something so that your brain can effectively code memory so you can remember what happened, which is why we've done like 660 podcasts. And when people will ask me specific questions and I'm like, I'd have to go back and listen to it again.
Yeah.
Well, to go back and listen to Jim Abrams on Power Athlete Radio, episode number 142.
But I remember it exactly because
500 episodes ago.
We were sitting in Old Power Athlete. We were on our mics like this. Like I remember sitting there and Googling and like it's a different scene. So you have to change scenery to encode memories. That's why he said Zoom is...
Time movement is key.
Is awful. He goes, you almost have to have somebody offline. He goes, you have to, if you're on a Zoom, you have to be chatting with somebody, like responding in a different way so that it's constantly changing because you can't code this. Just really fascinating talk. And then, I was just blown away by the fact that they are trying to figure out how to actually have you encode memories, just not give you an experience, but have you remember the experience.
Oh my God. We're talking about the plot of Total Recall.
We are?
We are. Recall. Remember, he goes in, it's like, go on, what's the best part of your vacation?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The memories.
The memories.
Have the trip experience that you can afford. always wanted to be? And what's the one consistent thing that you have about every trip? You. We can change that. You can be a spy. You can be an astronaut. And that's the whole pitch. Oh my God. Fucking Zuckerberg just watched Total Recall and he's making it a reality.
The one thing, and we did talk about this. So the one thing that was funny on that podcast is Zuckerberg is he bought some bitchin' property, like 50 acres in Kauai, right in front of like the world's best surf spot, and then hired Lenny Kai and all these big monster wave life surfers to basically teach him to foil board and big wave surf, which is fucking epic. Like he probably was like, "What do you guys want to hang out with me? $1 million a year?
Yeah.
Sweet." So he went out there and he's foil boards and surfs, and then also got into like jujitsu and fighting. And I always wonder if he did all this stuff so that the one day he had a chance to go on Joe Rogan wouldn't think he was such a toad.
100%. And
he's like, "Hey, I got to get a black belt in jujitsu because one day I'm going to go on Joe Rogan
and actually do jujitsu
and actually do jujitsu so that like Joe Rogan doesn't think I'm a fucking toad."
But here's the logic. You have older brothers. You try to impress them, so then you do XYZ, football, whatever. So not you specifically, but that's the logic I'm getting
Zuckerberg.
at. So that's what Zuckerberg did with Rogan. He basically big brothered him to try to say, "Oh, I'm cool, right? We're still friends."
Yeah, we're still friends, Shooter. Red Lobster. And I could hear Rogan being like, "Really? But
you?
And then at that point, you think Rogan's like, "Hey, I got some mats in the back. Let's fucking go.
Let's roll."
I 100%, if he didn't test him on that, I am disappointed.
Man, I am not a high level by any means, but I would fucking love to ground and pound on fucking Mark Zuckerberg.
I'm sure there are a lot of people.
Yeah, take this to the metaverse.
I'd be like, "All right, here's the deal. You get me in your best thing, and I'm just gonna I'll just fucking reverse fish hook you and fucking tear your head off." It was funny. I was talking to Craig Douglas yesterday. So Craig, I reached out. He's doing the plenary talk for our collective. So if you guys don't know Craig, he was on episode.
For our listeners, I don't have a computer in front of me.
I know.
We're using it to record the audio, so I am powerless.
But we had Craig on, and so I reached out to him just to see how he's doing, because he had an injury where he tore his adductor off of the pubic bone.
Oh.
So he was, I forgot. Oh, so he was squatting. And then also he's moving to, he bought a house. They're building it right off of Nettie Brown.
Oh, okay.
So he's like, "Hey, we're moving in around Christmas, like, can I come train?" I'm like, "Yeah, your fucking doors are always open for you, brother." But he was squatting, got into a weird position where the bar got a little, knee kind of buckled in, tore his adductor off of the bone. And, the PT's like, "Oh, it's no big deal." And then he went to a guy. He's like, "Hey, if you ever want to like effectively like
squat.
Well, no, but like if like actually be a high level jujitsu and like get somebody in a guard and not just have them fucking throw your leg off, like you have to go do the surgery." So he went and actually had it reattached. So we were just rapping a little bit about it yesterday, but like I can't remember what the hell we were going to talk about.
Rolling with Zuckerberg.
Oh, yeah. But we were rapping a little bit about like fighting and combatives and this, and I mentioned to him about we went to that Flow League thing and saw Gordon Ryan fight. And I was talking with Shandi, who's one of the Roberios, who's up in North Austin, about it. Like, there's like a really interesting thing with like jujitsu and being a high level jujitsu player. And my question is, like, I realize that that's a part of the world, like no gi, and people are into this jujitsu stuff. But I always thought that if you're a legitimate tough guy, there's one place you go to fucking find out how tough you are, which is the UFC. Yeah, it's like if I wanted to be like in my profession, there was two places to prove how tough I was: in the NFL or go be a professional boxer. Right. So like, it's real. There's only two places. Like you either either you're going to get out there and try to fight Tyson Fury and prove, or fucking, you're going to go out and fight, the best heavyweight in the world. Like, that's a proving ground. That's why I think it's so funny about Jake Paul and these guys, like basically trying to pull a bunch of MMA dudes who aren't necessarily boxers into a boxing match. Like, I want to see them fight legitimately against boxers. But that was what Craig and I were rapping about, because Craig's stuff, he teaches, combatives in a million different ways. And his stuff is more like, yeah, jujitsu is a piece of this, but if you just bring jujitsu into my class, you're going to get fucking smashed. Yeah. So
with Andrew Craig, my buddy growing up that we had on the podcast, his origin essentially started from bar fights and brawls to then the UFC. So he's that ultimate
dude.
Prove yourself.
I'll tell you this. I've always been a fan of boxing. I mean, to the point where I started martial arts pretty young, and when I was 10 years old, so this would have been 1986. I remember I can't remember the fight. It was like, it might've been like a Sugar Ray Leonard versus Tommy Hearns or Mr. Marvin Hagler. Like it was a fight, like one of the premier fights. I remember we watched it. And at that moment, and I'm even seeing Tyson, I remember thinking kicking is stupid. I don't ever want to kick again. And then that's when I got into like boxing. But that legitimate like tough guy piece is really fascinating in terms of like, can you do this? Like, what are you training for? And then I always go back to, do you remember, I know you love this movie, Man on Fire.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember when Denzel Washington?
Do you know this one?
I've seen it, but
it's a great movie. So
I knew Denzel was in it.
Oh yeah, dude, he's the, like for him.
Dakota Fanning.
Yeah.
He's a bodyguard
for
alcoholic.
Her. So and then what's the other movies he did with where he was the
Equalizer?
Oh, fucking those are great too. God damn it, I love Denzel. But he makes one of the greatest lines I've seen, and something that I've clicked into my life. And as I was talking with my daughter in the car, when he says to Dakota Fanning, remember when she's in the pool and he says to her, he's like, she's like, "Oh, I'm no good at this," and he's like, "There's only trained and untrained. That's it."
Ooh.
Like, are you like. And that was something that I as I was talking with my daughter, good. I'm like, you know what? Like because I was taking her to jiu-jitsu and she's like, "Well, Dad, like, how is this going to help me in this?" And I'm like, "Well, you haven't trained in it. Like once you're a trained individual, now you have the skills to assess and use them." And so we had this bitch and teaching moment, but it just goes back with everything, whether it be what you're doing or any of the stuff that people are listening to within the deal. Are you trained and untrained? Mm-hmm. And there's some weird shame with being untrained. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think I wrote a blog post about it. It's like, always be a white belt. Like there should be no shame. And that was even what I talked about when we were going to our first class. She's like, "Well, what if I don't do well? What if other people are better than me? What if I can't pick it up? Or what if I get choked out? Or what if somebody does something that I can't defend?" And I was like, "Well, why would you be able to? You've never done this before. Yeah. Like you're an untrained individual, and like there's no shame with being untrained. Everybody." And even when we went in and saw Shandy, I was like, "Dude, he's one of the top, Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys in the world." There was his first day. Ask him what his first day was. How old was he? And he's like, "Oh, I was 6 years old. I remember my first day." And everybody has their first day. I remember the first day when I went to go put on football pads and I didn't know how to get the fucking pads in the pants. And like the pads were slanted and I ended up putting the high part on the inside of the crotch. That means as I started running, it jammed me in the balls. Oh. And as we started running in first part of practice, I had to stop and fix my pads in my pants, because nobody told me how to put the pads in my pants. Like, so that idea of like untrained versus trained. And I think so many, and this is where I'm trying to get back to, as a parent, like you go in and all of a sudden you see like your wife gets pregnant or your significant other, whatever it is, and you see this bump and there's something in there, but like, it's kind of like a movie. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you see these babies come out and you realize I'm totally unprepared for this. And I can't believe they're going to let me take these things home. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, and then like after like a day in the hospital, they're like, "Okay, like show you how to put a car seat in." They put them in the car and they go, "Get the fuck out of here." And you're driving home and you're like, they let us leave with these things. Yeah. Now I have to take care of these things. And you're looking at your wife and she's like, "I don't fucking know what to do. I guess we'll figure it the fuck out." Like every other human being that's been through this journey has had to figure this shit out. And there's this weird pressure of like, well, this and this, and you reach out and everybody's got all these, at the end of the day, you have to get in there and you have to do the fight and you have to try to live or raise your kids or live the life that you think fits within your model of what you think is right and wrong. Yeah. And that's where I struggle with a lot of this stuff. And we were trying to go back to, I like to believe I'm an intelligent person that understands like a greater sense of myself and more importantly, what we're trying to get to. And when you hear shit that's so foreign to it, I'm like, fuck, that sounds really weird. And then you think, why is that person so far away from me? Why is their counterpoint so far away? And more importantly, why the fuck is anybody listening to this moron? Because I'm not. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's, one of the biggest things I try to do when I'm working with women and their partners is getting them really clear on their values and who they are in this world. And then even more so, what is their wellness philosophy? What's their health philosophy? What do you plan to do? And this is just like an example. What do you plan to do if baby starts to spike a little fever? And those are just examples I use. But are you going to immediately turn to Tylenol? Are you immediately going to go to the ER? Or are you going to try to breastfeed? Or are you going to try to bath or things like that? And then, go down the medicine route or the Western medicine route. But I think, our culture has It deemed things like independence and isolation as like positive things, and asking for help and utilizing a village, and being humble and having a forever student mindset as a weakness, or surrendering as a weakness. It's like, I don't know what to do. Like, throw it up. I need a group. I need a support group. And, we see that on the like most simple terms. In BirthFit, we see it with women that are like, oh, I've trained forever. I know what to do for modifications. It's like, no. Like, you're in season training for birth now. You're not simply modifying the WOD that's on the board, or you're not powerlifting. This is not powerlifting season anymore. This is not 800-meter season anymore. This is not CrossFit season. You're in season training for birth, mind, body, and soul. And so we're completely taking a 180 and going a different direction, or training from the inside out. And I think, that's such a small snippet of the bigger issue of like, I don't want to ask for help. I know my body. I know what I can do. But I don't feel like, if they're not clear on their values or a deeper trust within their body, if they numb out, if they use working out to numb out, to push through, do they really know their body? That brain to body connection, that heart to brain connection is not there. So it's really interesting, that you bring that up. And I think, just through simple exercises that we do in like preconception, in training, in pregnancy, and leading up, we start to give women this confidence, or this like, because trust is built is in small instances. And like, you can look back on any relationship and see that it's not like, something that's an overnight thing. It's through small acts. And, that's how you build trust within your body. Like, okay, I did this lunge where I used to feel unstable in a lunge. Okay, now I can do a split squat with dumbbells. That's pretty awesome. Oh, okay, I'm in labor now. I might need a lunge to, for a few contractions and to breathe in this position. And so coming into that with that kind of confidence is huge. But you're not going to achieve that with a fixed mindset of, oh, I got this. I know how to modify, and then being able to ask questions and have a support group. Support group is so, so key for parents. And I think, one of the big detriments that happened over the last 2.5 years is isolation. We're not designed to live in isolation. We as humans need connection. And, one of the things we love at BirthFit, and we put in all our programs, is talk about the Polyvagal Theory. And this is our social engagement theory. And, looks at the parasympathetics and sympathetics. And there's, the one of the branches of the parasympathetic from the vagus nerve comes around and innervates our face. And that really is our brain to heart connection. And then the other branch of the vagus nerve goes down and innervates our digestion. So this cranial nerve 10, the vagus nerve, has a huge influence on our autonomic nervous system. And we have an ability to influence this through breath, sound, and movement. And that's what we do at BirthFit, breath, sound, and movement. And so if you get comfortable breathing, if you get comfortable making a little bit of sound with breath, like on an exhale, then okay, I can do that. Like, it's wild to me how many women are not comfortable making that kind of sound in front of their significant others. Just breathing out loud and long exhales is like allowing that to vibrate in your body. It's like, oh, okay, how did we get here? How did we make a baby? That sort of thing. But we love the polyvagal theory because talking about the nervous system, and it basically looks at, are we safe or unsafe? And it starts with facial recognition, facial expressions. And, if you're a woman and you're going into the hospital and you see people all in masks, or, over the last 2.5 years, midwives showed up at houses with masks, but women were asked to labor in masks in the hospital over the last 2.5 years. So you take away that recognition, and now your nervous system is picking up on cues in the environment that, oh, things might not be safe. So then that's going to signal to your nervous system, and other processes in your body are going to get started on survival mode instead of thriving mode of health, growth, restoration, or having a baby. And that's, in a nutshell of kind of what the polyvagal theory is. But, the nervous system is at the base of everything of, what I do in my life now is like birth fit programming, chiropractic office, and figuring out, are we in my body right now, am I safe or unsafe? And baby is a hitchhiker on mom's nervous system.
Yeah, no, they're succubuses. They're little
and it's wild. So
sucking the life right out of you. Fucking cancer.
So if mom doesn't feel safe in her body, how will baby feel safe with mom and then on the outside and so on? So it's wild to think about, but getting so sure in who you are makes room for things like critical thinking, makes room for questioning. But separating people 6 feet apart is not the answer. Isolation is not the answer, because then people get lost in their heads and it becomes fear. And at no point do we want to make decisions over fear. Like, it's either love or fear, a cry for love. It's either an act of love or a cry for love. And it's wild. And if you think about it, you get caught up in the cascade of events that is the birth scenario in a traditional hospital. And you've got women and their families making decisions out of fear instead of love. And that often is where regret and shame and guilt and all that crap shows up. And that's unfortunate because they didn't know who they were to begin with,
Yeah, no, the mask thing has been fascinating to me because I always, you always hear the eyes of the window to the soul.
Yeah.
I don't buy that shit at all.
No.
After 2 years of looking at people in masks, I couldn't tell you a single thing about them, and I realized,
or what they said.
No.
Well, I've like to the point where
just take it off.
No, the people like wearing masks behind a screen, and I'm like, I can't fucking understand you. Yeah. I'm like, my hearing isn't that good. I read lips.
Yeah.
And then to the point where I'm like, I'll fucking leave. Like, I just don't want to be in that situation of some dipshit trying to.
Yeah, I can't do it.
No,
yeah.
And you know what? We shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to realize, and this is, I've made this point on the podcast since the very first fucking podcast. The minute that you trade humanity for ideology, it allows you to do fucked up shit to people. Like for all of this. I mean, that's people. You always hear people like, I can't believe that the Germans sat by while Hitler killed 6 million Jews. And you're like, you can't.
You just let it happen.
You just let it happen because it was real easy to trade humanity for ideology. Where now all of a sudden this is the ideology I'm following. It's really easy to just fucking cast these people away and dehumanize them. Yeah. And that's what we did. And I think what's wild for me is, hopefully people have a long memory. Unfortunately, we don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So because it's digital and it's not even an imprint.
I was just going to say that.
When Zuckerberg dropped that little piece on Joe Rogan, like I've listened to it, like the clip like 3 or 4 times, just because it's such a fascinating piece that they went in and he's actually talking, because I've never heard anybody talk about encoding memories.
Of course not.
But like it
other than 1989's Total Recall.
But it makes total sense. Total Recall, total sense that it's the memory is built off of a 3-dimensional model, right? So like it's. I mean, and think about like the TV. Think about it makes so much sense. I'm like, fuck, man. It allows people, but also the other one is because the way that information is being presented to us. Yeah, it's like I almost feel at some point like almost like a slight panic attack when too much information comes at me at once, to the point where like, you look at social media and this.
Oh, you got to get off.
I'm answering emails. I'm on the program. I'm looking at our Slack. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to write, like I'm working on that talk on what strength coaches and mentors can learn from antiquity. So I'm like working on that talk and like, I'm trying to handle like 27 things. And all of a sudden you're like, I think I'm having a fucking panic attack. Yeah. Like it's too much. And I like to think I'm an individual that can take in a lot of information really quickly, like fucking force feed it. And all of a sudden you get to this point where you're like, I think I got to go outside and go do something different. Like I need to go walk away. And the problem is that the information is coming at us so fast and it's so processed and so it's just too much.
Rapid fire right now. Yeah.
I mean, and then like especially like within the field you're in that's what reading Dr. Swan's book was just like so disheartening in that, like I don't think people put enough stress on the fact that the miracle of birth is truly a miracle. Think about like
wild.
Billions of sperm are somehow traveling through in like a portal to these eggs that has to be launched at the right time. And like, think about the timing. And then the fact that the temperature has to be right and the environment has to be right. And if the egg's fucked up, something will get kicked out in this. And like there's so many, when you look at like the process of birth and like the miracle, like when people are like, oh, it's not a miracle in this.
It's
like,
amazing that it happens as often as it does.
Dude, it 100%. Like this is like Robin Hood shooting an arrow from 100 yards away and splitting the other arrow. Like that's what birth is the only way I can describe it. And so this happens over and over again. I mean, like if the temperature's off, I mean, think about all of the things that don't allow this to happen. And I'm like, okay, either this is a miracle of birth or people are just fucking a lot, which it's probably a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. But you go through all this and I don't think people give it enough like stress and being like, I'm sure you have women like, I can't get pregnant. And you're like, I'm amazed anybody gets pregnant. But like,
That's exactly. I'm like, what?
Well, like explain the process. And I don't think people put enough stress on this about like, for this to happen, like just because some fucking kid, two 16-year-old kids bang once bang once in the back of a car after drinking a beer. Like, I mean, fuck this.
Do you know how many stars had to align for that?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, like women are only fertile, 2 days a month, like at that.
And certain women are fertile before they ovulate, and certain women are like it's fucking incredible.
The sperm can live there. They say up to 5 to 7 days. I tell people 5 days. That's your fertile window around ovulation. Have sex around that. But the sperm can live inside the woman for up to 5 to 7 days. So there's really like a week at the most. And 5 days is what I usually say that somebody could get pregnant each month. So why not try fertility awareness method instead of using hormonal birth control? Because really, that means you only...
Is that the rhythm method?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. You're only abstaining from sex or you're using a condom during that small amount of time each month. And, I just think like I never learned about cycle tracking until I was like in my late 20s. We didn't learn that in school. What's taught in reproductive ed is like basically horrible pictures of chlamydia and gonorrhea, and they're just like, don't have sex.
Oh, I remember sex ed. Do you guys remember sex ed in school?
Oh, well, I heard a comedian's bit, and this is hilarious. So the gym teacher brings a banana into class. We're going to learn how to put on a condom. And I can't get an erection on an empty stomach.
Oh, my God.
Dude, I remember
it's so bad.
The sex ed that we had was so disgustingly, like, I just remember thinking, like, you got to be fucking kidding me. Like it was like, do you remember the drunk driving videos?
Yes.
Ben Affleck was actually in one that we saw, which is even more funny.
You're talking about the movie Dazed and Confused, John.
No, I think it was Ben Affleck was in one of the after school videos that we had to watch, because now that I've seen him, I've been like, I think I've seen that before. And if we can go back and find
his face.
But there was like or maybe
talk about the defining moment in his career.
Or it could have been, it was either drunk driving or like the anti-steroid one we had to watch.
He did both.
But like there was like this guy, like he was either like a drunk or a steroid or something. We had to watch all these like stupid movies that like, don't do steroids, don't drink alcohol, don't do this. And I remember the teen pregnancy one was the best because it was like, I can't go to the prom because I have a kid. And then I like the fat chicks on the couch with the baby, like looking at him. And it's like, don't ruin your life. Dude, you guys, like they got to be on YouTube. They were so fucking hilarious in like the late 80s, early 90s. We had to watch these. It's like, I can't go to the prom. I have a kid.
Did y'all have to take home babies? Like, obviously I went to high school in like a cornfield, but we had to take home babies for 24 hours. And if they cried, you had to turn a key.
Ours were made of a bag of flour. So we had a bag of flour that we ended up duct taping, and then they had baby clothes that we had to put on it, and you had to like carry the baby for one of our classes, and I forgot what it was for which one, for like a week or two. Yeah. And I figured out real quick that I could pawn it off on chicks. They'd be like, oh, it's so cute. I'm like, do you want to carry it around? And they would be like, yeah, I'll take it. And I just would pawn the kid off on the kids.
You didn't have this?
Well, I was 11. I remember sex ed 11 years old because my mom was pregnant with my younger sister.
Okay.
So then it was like, making the connections. And then we had an egg. So we had to care for an egg.
An egg. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think that's a great class. They don't do that anymore in school.
Be too confusing.
Yeah. They have animation classes or computer classes or gaming.
The gender thing's real interesting.
Gaming?
There's a gaming
Aim.
class.
But
Gaming.
But think about like the gender thing is really interesting now. Like, and I hope nobody ever takes it lightly, but I do believe in this country, people have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and you have the right to make your own decisions.
Absolutely.
Now go and be a fucking adult and make your own decisions.
And own those consequences. Yeah.
But I mean, and I feel like that, but then yet we live in a fucking nanny state where they, you can't walk into a store with a mask for almost without a mask for 2 fucking years.
It's wild. At the time we live in.
I posted a funny one. So, like I mentioned, I was working on that talk yesterday, and as I was coming through, a quote, and it was actually from Cicero, and I posted it up on my Instagram, which is, times are bad. Children no longer obey their parents, and everyone is writing a book. And I was actually going to change it to a podcast because I thought that'd be more ironic. But I mean, Socrates wrote about it. Cicero wrote about it. Like, there's always been this feeling that the world's coming to an end and we're living in the worst of times. It's just
changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people don't like change.
Yeah.
And, the species that forgets to evolve or doesn't want to evolve ends up getting killed off. Mm-hmm. And so, that's what the one thing that we've learned on this planet is I think 99% of all species that have lived on this planet have gone extinct. And so, that's a pretty good one. And now we're in mass extinction.
We're here.
I would love to have Dr. Swan on the podcast because the one thing that I didn't get from her book, which is like, what is it going to take to wholesale fix this?
Well, I think so.
I'm sure Rogan got into it a little bit, but I didn't leave the book. It was Frank, she got into a few of these things, but I'm like, how do we fix this on the planet?
But that may not be her mission with the book is to provide a solution.
Well, I think if you point out massive problems like this, you have to provide people some solutions that they can. Like she talked about eating organic food and washing it. She talked about not drinking and not microwaving plastic and making sure you have a water filter on because the water that's coming through a tap is heavily contaminated.
Well, those are big steps for some. You've already done that.
Oh yeah, for years.
Pre-book.
Well, the one good thing about every movie is if you watch it long enough, you eventually get to the plot. And we're living in this movie right now. However you feel about the lockdowns, whatever. I think the most interesting one, and I'd love to see the long-term research on the effects of children wearing masks in schools.
That's what I did write down. So you mentioned, Lindsay, earlier when the kids would come in and play.
Yeah. So
you were open for a year. This is the previous facility, and you'd see a difference between the kids that had this opportunity of play. And then 3, 6, 9, when the people finally found you, just the difference in even that small time of open up.
Their social development, their cognitive development, even being able to move. In the last year, the CDC took away crawling as a milestone, which is bananas.
No, the cross patterning.
Why?
What is it? What is it called? The crawl pattern is cross patterning. Is directly tied to developmental process by using unilateral movements to move yourself through space.
Yeah. So they noticed that kids were being developmentally delayed, so they basically moved the markers back and took away crawling. This had to have been maybe 6 months ago at the beginning of the year. So you'll see a bunch of Instagram profiles like BirthFit. We did a post on why crawling is so important. Other Instagram parenting, developmental profiles, why we need crawling, things like that. But, if kids aren't around other kids, they can't see motivation. They don't learn how to socialize, how to play. And they become very insecure in their bodies and their environment because there's no experiences for them. We still have a kid in our office. He's probably about 2. He just turned 2 and his parents brought him into us. We opened the office in January. They were there within 3 months, but they very, I would say COVID scared. So they didn't really see anybody. And, being in the office, allowing him to interact with other kiddos, he's still not comfortable, but he's like in a place where he walks into the office now, walks back to the movement room. He's able to like interact in that way, but he still has to have his adjustments when he's on top of mom. Like it has to be mom. It's not dad, it's mom. Dad can't bring him in, even though that would help out, with convenience sake. But we see things like that all the time right now.
And part of the birth fit education is you're having ladies move and do these different crawling patterns.
Oh, yeah.
Dead bug work. So explain the purpose of that, the mom moving so the kids can help.
Well, yeah. So like if you're just thinking about this postpartum wise, we use movements called the birth fit basics. Y'all have like a dead bug variation. Kids go through these developmental movements when, like I talked about this at Power Athlete Symposium, like 2018 or something. Whenever we learn to move as humans, when we're left on a beautiful rug with like no interruption, no bumbo seats, nothing, but just a toy, maybe a little motivation, like a block or something, then we start to move, and we all go through these developmental milestones in a sequential order, in the same order. And they ideally happen around certain times, like ideally crawling happens between 7 and 9 months. Maybe a little later, it's okay if it does. But as long as we go through these developmental milestones, that helps our social and cognitive development as well. So we have moms do the birth at basics, and it's cool because they're doing that at the same time baby's watching them, and baby sees like the biggest tool you have as a parent is
monkeys.
Demonstration.
Yeah. So we learn, like kids learn mannerisms. They learn how to walk. They learn gait. They learn everything by watching their parents.
Yeah.
That's why like the more active you are as a parent and the more you move through space and this, like, good moving kids have good moving parents.
Yeah,
it's just like, the other one we found taking your kids to birthday parties is usually the asshole kids have asshole parents. Where like to the point where like you're like, that kid's a fucking dick, and you meet the parents, you're like,
have you researched this?
Everything fucking checks out. Like you'll see when you take your kids to school, you'll be like, this kid's a little asshole, and then you meet the parent, you're like, story
makes
checks
sense.
out.
Yeah.
Well, as a coach of teens, I see some differences between the kids where the parents are very proactive. They come and meet you. They're there. And then the kids that, are either dropped off or find their way to practice. So even, in the later years.
So I think as a parent, you have to be a little bit of a blend of both. So like the thing that this
I'm not saying overactive, John.
No. So this is what I've observed is that as a parent, you have to like be active and interested and involved enough that the kid knows that you're involved in watching, but not so active that they don't learn to do shit for themselves. So there's like this interesting thing of like, I want to be there. Like I'm dealing with this in Cash's football. So like he missed 2 weeks because we were on a trip and the whole deal. So he's a little behind. So he gets there and like, I went out first, or Kate took him the first time, I took him last time. And the coach is working with like 4 kids to try and teach them to play. And then Cash and his other buddies were playing, obviously, scout team defense. And so the coach is over there working, and the kids were kind of milling around. And I was like, hey, is it cool if I coach the defense? And he's like, sure, do whatever. And so I brought the kids over. I'm like, here's what we're going to do. We know exactly who's going to get the ball because we can see them drawing the plays back there. I want you guys to do here, and you're going to crash. I'm going to yell casino, and you guys are all going to run. And so I'm over there like coaching them up. Dude, we totally were getting them. And then they went to go play defense, and I was like, great, you guys are my offense now. This is what we're going to do. We're doing a bunch of misdirection handoff, and we had some nice runs. And the coach is like, wow, that was great. And I'm like, I'm happy to take the kids that you don't want. And like, it's not that they don't want, but like at 6 years old, you're trying to find the kids that are like, could probably help you win. And there's a whole bunch of other kids that are just, but like at the end of the day, like as long as everybody's having fun, they're outside and they're learning it. And I've told people, I'm like, dude, I played a decade in the NFL. I was not switched on at that age. Like there were other kids that were way more switched on. Like I would have been probably on the scout team. Mm-hmm. Now that didn't mean that was like, I mean, we didn't have flag football when I was a kid. I mean, but like, so like I see it and I think like there's this idea that, this kid, like fucking, you don't know anything that these kids are going to do.
They're 6.
Yeah, they're 6. I'm like, come talk to me when they're 16 or 17 or 18 years old. Now we'll figure this shit out a little bit. Like Riley, the kid we worked with, What a really nice kid.
I love that family.
I was he was such not only a good looking kid, like physically, like he's
huge.
Like he's a good looking kid, but like well put together, like good proportions, like just physically, like so. I know this sounds so weird, but playing football, like you size people up real fast, like physically, you got to be able to run the line, look at a dude, and you kind of like you go through like the checkpoints, like. Really well put together, good shoulders, like like a good shaped head.
There's potential there.
Well, he so that's another one I laugh at. Like I constantly look at people's heads, and I'm like, oh, he's got a good shaped head. It's kind of square and blocky, and you see other people that have like a pointy cone head or a weird fucking head, and I'm like, that dude's got a weird fucking head. And I played with a lot of dudes that had weird heads. But I was like, he's got physically, he's well put together. I mean, he's a little light in his ass, but he's only 15 years old.
Yeah,
he's going to lift weights. He's going to get bigger. And I was like, man, you have so much potential. And a really nice kid. And so I know when his mom came in and we were like, dude, I'm just happy. I'm so impressed that you brought him here because I know it's not an easy drive. And the fact that they showed up and she was nervous, they went and stayed at a hotel the night before. I was like, Mom, you did a great job. Like, we're happy to help him. And it was just a very nice kid. And it was extremely refreshing because I listened to Chris's stories, working with some of the lacrosse kids in this. And I know there's kids like that and there's kids aren't like that. And that's just the same way it was when we were growing up in this. And he's a very nice kid and I wish him nothing but the best. And hopefully, even to the point where I said to his mom, like, I think this kid might be too fucking nice. He might be. I was like, he needs to go live with Doris Wellborn. I was like, you need to send him to California, live with Doris. He'll fucking straighten his ass out in about 2 weeks.
You would let him date your sister? Is that what you're saying? What's some of those old high school football ones?
So when
you're so nice, I'd let you date my sister.
No, ma'am.
Like, to the point where he was giving me yes or no, sir, and I was like, first of all, dude, you don't call me sir, just call me John. And he's like, I know it's hard.
I'm sir. You can call me sir.
I'm sorry. And I was like, call Chris sir, he needs that. But so my brothers played college football, and I was pretty young, and I was in high school, and so I used to go, and I thought I was super cool to stand on the sidelines because I wanted to see it, and I was in the middle. And I remember my brothers played offense, and they went out, and my brother's roommate, or one of the guys, was a guy named Heath Martin, and Heath was like the coolest fucking cat in the world. He was from Georgia, had like a southern accent. Dude was super strong, like fucking big neck, and he played middle linebacker, and he used to just fucking murder people. And I remember he came out, and their linebacker coach was like motherfucking two of the other linebackers because they played like a 4-3. And I remember he said to the guys, he's like, Jesus Christ, you guys aren't there doing anything. He's like, frankly, you guys are the nicest linebackers I've ever seen. You guys are so nice, I'd let you date my sister. And he's like, Heath Martin, I would never let this guy date my sister. He's a fucking animal. You guys, nothing's she's like safe as like kitten in wool, right? Like just killing him. And I remember my brother came out, and after I was laughing, I was like, dude, I've never heard this one. He's like, oh yeah, dude, if you hang around long enough, you can hear some funny fucking lines.
Yeah.
But nice kid, really nice kid. And just physically, and I think the reason that I'm stressing that is that his mom was taking him to these college kind of high school like Baylor, and they take him to these schools for these recruiting things. And I know exactly what the coaches are looking for. And that's what I was trying to talk him through. I'm like, when you go over to them, and I even told him, I'm like, hey, if they ask you anything, you can name drop me and reference me. Tell them that you come train with me. Tell them who I am. Mm-hmm. Like, because there's a hierarchy in this stuff, it's like that's important. And the one thing I guarantee every one of them, like, good looking kid, well put together, moves pretty well, looks athletic, like physically looks the part. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, man, that airport test or the bus test or whatever you call it.
Well, in baseball, 5 tools. So they look the part. That's the biggest one.
Do you look like your professional athlete?
Essentially. That's good for recruiting.
Yeah.
Because then if you can't necessarily play, you look the part, and they believe that they can coach you up into this professional.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Well, I always heard this one. The one thing you can't coach is size. And he's got a good opportunity. So no, I'm excited for him. He's just a really nice kid. Like I think at least from our point of view, you kind of get to these like point like Cicero, like the kids don't listen to their parents. All these kids are fucking assholes, and we hear these different stories. And you meet a kid, and you're like, you just renewed. And like my nephew Luke, same way, like same exact, like really nice kid, super smart, like respectful. And I think those kids give us more hope and realize that like not everybody's a fucking asshole, regardless of what the internet and social media wants you to think.
The world is not doomed.
No, it's not doomed.
There's great people out there.
Unless we're talking about dying fertility rates. I did my part. I got 3 kids, so I beat the average. But like, my brothers both have 2 kids. I was giving them shit. I'm like, you're not doing anything to extend the planet. I'm trying to grow the planet.
So the message of the podcast is to have more babies.
I think
It gives you more business.
If I had met my wife earlier, because
Yeah.
I didn't meet my wife until I was 32. So if I had met my wife earlier and we'd started earlier, I would have had more kids.
Yeah.
I think the job I did playing the NFL was extremely selfish. And I don't know if I would have been able to be a dad and do all that I can do early on in my NFL career. But like in my later 20s and 30s, I probably would have been fine. But like that age from like 23 to about 28, I was a fucking idiot.
Most of us are.
Yeah, no, I was a fucking moron. But at like 28, 29, 30, I think I would have been better at it. But I think it would have been, if I had started much earlier, I would have had more kids.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have about 5 or 6 of them. But having kids is a young man's game. Like even at like having kids, like I'll meet like dads and who are like in their like mid 40s or late 40s, early 50s with like a 3 or 4 year old. And I'm like, oh my God.
Stay ready.
Dude, think about it. In my 20s, I didn't need to sleep. I would have been fine.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you get to like, I'm like, 45, 46 now. And all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, dude, I couldn't do this again. Or maybe you could. So keep training. We got Grindstone for you guys if you need it. So what's next?
What's next?
Yeah. I mean, you're doing chiropractic. You've taken BirthFit online. Do you feel that there's a place to get
BirthFit
back?
podcast.
BirthFit. I was actually the initial. I think I was the first guest on the BirthFit podcast.
Well, she stopped doing guests. Now it's just rants like Bill Burr.
Is my inspo on that? No, I'm kidding.
I love it. Like, I know
You
people
love a good rant? We need you.
just me ranting.
You should have a few
Hey, John, I'm going to spin you up real quick.
Oh shit.
Random topic, go.
I like Bill Burr because he will, like, his perception of some things is really fucking off.
He's hilarious.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
His comedy, I'm sure you hear certain comics, you're like, oh yeah, it's good. Bill Burr's comedy speaks to me. Like I just like he's be like, what the fuck is up with this? And
Oh yeah, my best friend's from Southie, and I know, like, I've flown up and met all of his boys that are all tradesmen, electricians, plumbers, bus driver. Like, all these guys didn't go to college, so you just drop in, and it's basically hanging out with Bill Burr. They're all pissed off about something. They all got kids, so they all got these weird ass stories and these accents. It's fantastic.
I love the accents.
the one that strikes me funny is Bill Burr was in The Mandalorian. Right, so which is hysterical.
What I appreciate is he stood up for Gina Carano.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
and they didn't cancel him, but they canceled Gina.
Yeah.
And now she's did you see she plays a FBI agent in the new My Son Hunter?
Sign me up. I'm in.
just saw the preview for who was it, Ben Shapiro and the Daily Caller started funding these movies, and they made one about Biden's son, Hunter Biden. It's called My Son Hunter. And
She is an FBI agent.
yeah, she's playing an FBI agent, and it looks like the trailer. It looks fucking ridiculous.
Well, she's in a Western that they made, and she plays an amazing dame.
But dude, I can't
love her.
like the trailer looks absolutely fucking hysterically fucking crazy. It's like he's over there trying to snort Parmesan cheese. I mean, it's
Well, we
fucking
know
weird.
what's next for Gina. What's up for you?
Well, I do. Okay, I do love Gina. No, we are growing our office. It's growing rapidly. So if you're a chiropractor and you're listening to this and you want a job in New Braunfels, Texas, we're hiring associates.
Nice.
Yeah. It's a great place to live, apparently. Growing that office, we are open to having a family in our 40s. So that's why we train.
Nice.
We'll see what happens.
Fuck.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Yeah.
If you can do it, I would love, like, I don't think everybody should have kids, but I think everybody should at least experience what it's like. But like, I also don't like, where people are like, oh, everybody should have, no, I don't think everybody should have kids. I think you should have a basic intelligence test, like a driving test for it. But if you do it, the tired I was having children has never left. Like, I was like, God,
That's what everybody says.
yeah, like the parent tired.
You don't ever catch up on sleep.
And like it's funny. I came out and I saw my wife today, or when I thought she was in the kitchen. I'm like, how are you? She's like, I'm already tired. Like she's
7
like,
a.m.
It's 7 a.m. And then like my daughter came down. We were trying to finish homework, she starts in tears. And I can hear my wife yelling. And whenever I hear my wife yell at the kids, I go in there. I'm like, give it to them. Give them a little bit more. Put a little more fucking steam on that one. I'm like, because like my kids have been raised really nice. Like my mom yelled at us at least 100 times a day, hit it like she'd fucking fly off the handle. And I'm like, I don't think these kids respect you. You got to take it up a notch. And she's like, just because that's how you were raised. I'm like, yeah, well, we were fucking ready all the time to get smacked. Like, what is it? Josh Bryant's gas station ready? I'm like, you had to be Doris Wellborn ready.
Hey, new T-shirt, Harry.
Yeah.
But yeah, that gas station ready, I fucking laugh about that constantly.
Lance is the man. Y'all had a beautiful wedding. I hate to be that guy.
Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah.
I had to interrupt your DJ, remind him that we are in Wimberley, Texas, and we need some country and western, please.
Yeah, that's good.
What was just like hip hop?
There was a lot of kids at the wedding.
You
can imagine. So it was
fun.
kids bop, and they were dancing around. I'm like, I'm in my boots. I got my
I'm
dress
ready
hat.
to go.
I'm ready to two-step around here.
The wedding was awesome. It was at Cypress Creek, and we had Element margaritas. And the next day when I was like picking up stuff, the bartenders were like, we've never seen people drink so much tequila and stay hydrated. Like, what? Okay, awesome. But Lance is awesome. He's, speaking of tradesmen, he's an electrician. And we were talking about, goals and things for the future. And we were talking about schools for kiddos. And do we want them to go to university? And I'll intersect this in here. We're like, I don't know if we want to send him to college right away. Like, he was in the military. He was a Marine. And then he came back and taught CrossFit seminars in South America for a little bit. And then became a welder and electrician. He was like, I think learn a trade or go to the military for 4 years. And I was like, I kind of like that. Like, that is awesome. Because then you don't go in student loan debt like half the world right now. I was like, okay, that is a great thought. I'm into that.
Do you think college will still be a thing? I listened to.
I don't know.
I forgot who I listened to on a podcast. Was it? It might have been. It wasn't Elon Musk.
Cuban. Mark Cuban's on a push, but he's pushing college for engineers and
I can't remember
certain business
who said it. It was like
professions.
if you're a lawyer or a doctor, obviously you have to go to school to get the degrees and do all that. But for most people, like they've removed the college degree requirement from a majority of these jobs.
Yeah.
And like some of like the top coders are like 13, 15-year-old kids, and he's like, okay, if a 15-year-old kid is one of the top coders and he graduates high school and he gets a job, like why does he need to go to school to learn to code? He's already doing it. And we want that neuroplasticity. So I think that there's I had a great experience in college. I got to go play football. I got to go to Berkeley. Like it was.
I loved college.
It was super impactful to me to the point where I'm like working with my kids this morning, and like we're working on these like book report stuff, and I'm like talking to her about argument and like the hero's journey and this, and I was like, and I used to teach. I taught in the Oakland Public School District. Like this is what I did, and like it was so impactful for me that all like the maybe the thought that like that isn't going to be a thing and they won't get that experience seems like terrible for me. But I'm like, well, I mean, what you said, like what if you learned to trade? What if you went and backpacked around Europe and did shitty jobs for 2 years? I think you have to get some form of life experience. I think what people are nervous about is if kids don't go to college, what are they going to do for life experience? Because when you go to college, like, now you're on your own, you're going to school, you have to manage a schedule, budget. I mean, it's kind of teaching you these life lessons early.
Yeah. Make friends.
How to make friends. Yeah. So I worry about that.
I'll just get them season tickets to A&M football.
Gig them. They'll probably still be bad back then.
Is Texas A&M really that big a cult? It feels very cultish whenever I like Luke K was talking to me about it. It just felt really weird and cultish.
Our former intern, Texas A&M, and Texas A&M listeners out there, we are looking for interns and have a relationship with your university to provide you credits. So hit us up. Exciting that y'all are also looking for practitioners.
Yeah.
So if you're if you're a chiropractor, you want to move to New Braunfels, Texas, look her up.
And coaches.
Yeah. We basically are looking for members of our team because we went from 0 patients January 17th to over 250 patients now. And we need more adjusting shifts. We need open basically 6 days a week.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So it's thriving. And my goal there is just to really stay as the women's health lead kind of, and focus on preconception, pregnancy, and postpartum healing. I haven't been to any births lately. My last birth I was at was in January, and it was a beautiful birth. And I think I'll revisit being a doula and or some form of, birth attendant later in life. But right now, all my hours are spent either at the office or with Lance.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool. If people want to get a hold of you, where's the easiest way to social?
Easiest way at BirthFit, or Lindsay_M_can2. I did change my last name. That was a really important decision for us. Because when we got married, that was a big question from Lance was, would you be willing to change your last name? And I think this is a good question to show up on a first date, especially when you're, in your late 30s. And I said, yes. And I said, would you be open to a home birth and no vaccines or really hippy dippy shit like that? And he said, yeah. All right. So we're on the same page. So that was our first date.
Shit. Let's just sign off.
Yeah.
We gotta end
Thanks
this.
for tuning in to another episode of Power Athlete Radio. Bye.
Bye.